Chapters 6 and 7 are about cellular respiration and photosynthesis, which are these large, massive, metabolic type of reactions. We're going to really not delve deeply into these because it can take a lot of time to get to talk about both of them in great detail. You can either get into detail or keep it way at a broad aspect, so we're going to keep it broad as we can. Chapter 6 deals with cellular respiration, Chapter 7 photosynthesis. We're going to take these in reverse order and start with photosynthesis. Alright, photosynthesis is a process in which autotrophs, and we use autotrophs and producers in the same manner. Auto means self. Trophism is feeding, so they are self-feeders, all right? And so they can make their own food using solar energy. And some examples we've talked about in Chapter 1 of autotrophs are plants, algae, and some bacteria can actually convert solar energy into chemical energy as well. If you're looking at the general equation for photosynthesis, you have carbon dioxide and you have water, and things happen to where those are rearranged to form a molecule of glucose. You see glucose has 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. And also there are oxygens that are released, right? And so during photosynthesis, we take out carbon dioxide from the environment and release oxygen, and that both of those things are really good, right? Because carbon dioxide is responsible for climate change. Of course, oxygen is needed for us to breathe, so it's extremely important. So if we look at the broad aspect of how photosynthesis works, you have the sun, and it's releasing solar energy. Where photosynthesis mostly occurs is in the leaves of the plant, all right? And so the solar energy hits the leaf, all right? On the other side, on the opposite side of the leaf, the belly surface, if you will, there are cells called stomata, and these stomata act as sort of like transport proteins in a membrane. There's a concentration gradient of carbon dioxide outside of the leaf versus inside the leaf, so the stomata opens, the carbon dioxide automatically moves into the leaf because of the diffusion. Likewise, at the same time, there is water in the roots of the plant, and that water is taken up through the stems and taken to the leaf, and now you have the two reactants for photosynthesis. Right. So we have a leaf, and inside the leaf we have plant cells, and inside the plant cell we have chloroplasts. These chloroplasts have stacks of little discs called thylakoids, and those thylakoids contain a pigment called chlorophyll. That pigment is the pigment that allows them to take the solar energy and convert it into chemical energy. And so there are two reactions that happen during photosynthesis. The first is the light reaction, and that again occurs during the daytime since it's light reaction. And so solar energy that hits the chlorophyll causes water to be broken apart, and so there are hydrogen ions that are available as the water is being broken apart, right? And remember, the thylakoids have the chlorophyll, so solar energy hits the chlorophyll and the thylakoid, and when that happens, water is broken down, and hydrogen and oxygen are now available. And then that, again, the light reaction occurring during the day, and then there is a dark reaction at night, right? And these hydrogen ions are combined with the carbon dioxides to form glucose, right? They're just rearranged. The carbon dioxides are broken up. Those oxygens are there, and the hydrogens are there to be rearranged to make a glucose molecule. And this happens during the night. Sometimes you'll see this listed as the Calvin cycle, and so there's a lot of things happening in these two reactions, the light and the dark reaction. This is just a very, very simplistic way to demonstrate that. And so once the glucose is made, the glucose is then sent down to the sent down to the roots to be stored or utilized by the plant to do work, right? Or for the cells to do work. The remaining oxygen that doesn't get combined to form glucose forms atmospheric oxygen, and again a concentration gradient exists within the leaf versus outside the leaf. And so as the stomata opens up, oxygen is released from the leaf, and so there's our second product of photosynthesis. The first being glucose, and now you have those oxygens being released. And that, if I would move it the right direction, is photosynthesis, right? Again, very, very broad, simplistic way to describe it, but I think for our purposes is good enough, all right? So this brings us to the next major metabolic pathway reaction, and it's called cellular respiration. Now, almost all organisms undergo cellular respiration, all right? We cannot make our own food in photosynthesis, so we have to ingest glucose in order to get our glucose supply, as opposed to plants. But most all organisms will undergo cellular respiration, and during this process, energy from glucose is broken down and what is released is energy, and that energy is caught by these ADP and phosphate groups we talked about in chapter 5 to form ATPs. Some bacteria and some simple fungi do use fermentation, which is anaerobic fermentation, but most will use cellular respiration. So the term aerobic means in the presence of oxygen, and if you look at the general equation for cellular respiration, you have glucose, which is one molecule that has a lot of energy, in the presence of oxygen, and then the products then, those are the reactants, the products then would be carbon dioxide and water. So that oxygen is important for cellular respiration to occur. For every single glucose molecule that undergoes the process of cellular respiration, 36 ATPs are produced. So that's a lot of ATPs, right? So cellular respiration undergoes three processes. All right. The first is called glycolysis. Glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm of the cell, and that area is anaerobic. All right. Anaerobic means without oxygen. So if you can think of like space is anaerobic, mud in the bottom of a pond, if you're walking around and you smell like a rotten egg smell, that's because oxygen's not in that mud, and so the bacteria that are in there that are breaking down material are producing what is called hydrogen sulfide as a result, because they don't need oxygen to live, and as a byproduct they produce hydrogen sulfide. It gives off that rotten egg smell. So anaerobic, the cytoplasm is anaerobic, and really what happens in glycolysis is the glucose molecule, which has 6 carbons, is broken in half, and when it does, it releases some energy, but what you result, the products are going to be 2 small 3 carbon chains now instead of 6, right? And when all said and done in glycolysis, there's no net ATPs produced. So the first step of cellular respiration doesn't generate any ATPs. And if you look at animal cell here, the cytoplasm here, you have the mitochondria all around, but the cytoplasm's the kind of the yellowish tan color, and that's where the glycolysis occurs. It doesn't occur in the mitochondria like we talked about, as cellular respiration being the site, the mitochondria being the site of cellular respiration. But we will get to that here in just a second.